Hi, this is Meganadha. Welcome back. This is the lecture 3 of C programming tutorials. And in the previous modules, we learned about how to install the software, that's code blocks. And in the previous one, second lecture, we learned Hello World program. In module 3, in this module, we will be learning what are data types in C language. So now before we jump into data types, we need to learn why we need these data types. So what are these data types, right? So to explain that clearly, so what I'll do is, let me open MS Paint. And now let's take you're working for a domain called banking domain. So domain is nothing but the industry, right? Or you're working for health insurance domain, or you're working for any other domain. Now you want to write a program, or you want to write some code to store some values in the logic that you write. So what you can do is, you might want to store principal amount, you might want to store name of the customer, you might want to store rate of interest, or maybe duration. Now coming back to health insurance, you want to store age of customer, or you want to store premium amount. So depending on the domain that you work on, you might need to store different types of data. Now in this case, amount could be so let's try to understand this. Now in this case, amount is a number. Name of customer will be a series of characters, and the rate of interest could be a floating value like 3.5 or 2.5, like that. Duration should be also a number. So the data that you want to store is not of same type. It could be different types of data depending on the requirement. So in this case, there should be a number less than 100. So in this case, the premium could be anywhere between 1,000 to 10,000. That depends on what kind of policy that you issue, or etc., right? So now in your program that you're going to write, you need to store different types of data. So depending on the data that you want to store, you have to declare it the respective data type. So now we will jump into data type, and let's see this now. Now what we'll do is, let me open code blocks. And now what I'll do is, let's create a new empty file. So file, new empty file, and let me save it. So I'll be saving this as, because it is third lecture, 3.datatypes.c. Remember, C programs, we need to end with C. Now I'll write a simple C program. So include stdio.h, include conio.h, void main. Now what I'll do is, I'll declare I want to store two numbers. So in C language, we have data type called int, stands for integer. So int a is equal to 5 and b is equal to 10. Now I want to find sum of these two numbers, int c. C is equal to a plus b. Now I want to print this value. So what I'll do now is, I'll write here printf. So if you want to print a variable value, remember guys, so this is called data type. So we declared this as integer. This is called variable. This is called the value. I repeat once again, this is called data type, this is called variable, and this is the value. Now to print the value, we need to write %d. That d indicates this, we use it for printing integer value. Now I'll write here comma c. I can also write like this, sum is equal to. Now what happens when we execute this code is, in case of %d, in place of %d, the value of c will be replaced. Now let's run the code. So save it and build this code. You can see there are no errors, and let's run the code. Now you can see that the sum is equal to 15. So %d is replaced with the c value. Now let's take another example. Now what I'll do is, I don't want to print like this, but I want to print sum of a and 5 and 10 is 15. So in that case, I have to write printf sum of %d and %d is %d. Now what I need now In case of this one, in place of this I want to print a value. In place of this I want to print b value. In place of last one I want to print c value. So now you will see that sum of 5 and 10 is 15. So let's save this and build this code. You can see there are no errors, and run the code. Now you can see here we're getting sum of 5 and 10 is 15. Now we're getting the answer in the same line. So what you have to do if you want in the next line, in C language we have something called /n. Now let's save it and build this. You can see that no errors, and let's run the code. Now you can see we're getting the answer, sum of 5 and 10 is 15. Okay, so here we learned how to declare an integer, and how to assign the values, and how to find sum, and how to print it. Now if you want to store a decimal value, let's check, I want to store 5.5, 6.2, etc. So we need to go for a float. Now let's try to understand that. Now see here, I'll declare a variable called float. Float p is equal to 5.5, and I want to print it. So printf value of p is, now the format specifier for p float value is %f, and in case of %f you want to print p. Now let's run the code. So for integers we use %d, for float values we use %f. Now let's save this and let's run the code. Now I'm getting the previous output. So what I have to do is I need to build the code once again. So let's debug and build the code, and now let's run the code. Now you can see here it's printing 5.5. Now you can see here that for floating values we are using %f. Now what we'll do is we'll try to understand. So this is called format specifier. So for integers we have used %d, for float values we have used %f. Now what we'll do is let's try to understand char data types, right? So now I will declare here char gender is equal to male. Now for numbers we don't have to use single quotes, but if you want to store a string, or if you want to store a character, you need to use in single quotes, you have to use the character. So char data type is used for single character, storing single char. Now what I'll do is I'll write here printf. So gender is %c. So for char we have to use %c, and you can see here I'm writing here gender. Now the output will be gender is yum. So it'll print like this. Now let's save it and let's build it and let's run the code. So you can see here gender is yum. Now you can also print, let's take for example, let's try to see this. So I'll write here int age is equal to 30, and char gender is equal to yum, and now see this, what I'll do now is I want to print both. Now let's take one more float. Float weight is equal to let's put here 67.5 f. Now what I'll do is we can print all these three variables together. So printf, hi, I am %d old, and gender %c, and weight colon I want to print there %f. Now you can print all these three variables together in the single line. Now the first %d stands for integer. We want to put here age, so you can write here comma age, and the second one that you gave is %c, so you want to print here gender, so you can write here gender, and the third one that you have to write here is weight, so you have to write, that's why we gave here %f, so you can write here weight. Now you need to put semicolon. So like this you can actually print all the three types of variables which are different data types in the same line using format specifiers. These are called format specifiers. Now let's save this and build it, and you can see no errors, and run the code. So you can see here, hi, I'm 30 old and gender male and weight 67.5. So what we learned so far is, so for storing numbers we have in data type. For storing char we have char data type. For storing decimal values we have float. And remember, for char data type we need to give the data in a single quotes. Now we'll see a list of all data types and the respective format specifiers, right? So now you see now we have in C language, these are the data types that we have: unsigned int, integer, unsigned long, long data type, float, double, long double, unsigned char, and char. So these are the data types that we have in C language. So what does it mean by this? Now, unsigned int can only store positive numbers. Integer can store positive and negative numbers. Unsigned long is a bigger integer than compared to integer. This is a long value, and this can store positive integers which are bigger than integers. And long can store positive and negative data types, negative numbers which are bigger than integers. Now float, double, decimal, float, double, and long double, all these three data types can store decimal values. So this is a smaller one. This is a little bit bigger than float. This is a little bit more accurate than double. And coming to this unsigned char and char, so basically these char data types are designed to store both char as well as integers. So let's take, you want to store small integer values. Let's take 1 to 10 you want to store. Instead of going to integer, you can also use char. Now let's see an example for that. Now see here. Now I want to store small numbers. I'm declaring like char data is equal to 5. And I'll write here printf data value is %d, comma, data. Now see here, although I declared this as char data type, I'm trying to assign 5. So this is declared as char, but I am trying to assign 5. Now I'm giving here %d. So that will print the data value as 5. So char can be used to store character as well as numbers, small numbers, and sorry. But while printing you had to give %d. Now let's save it. And you can also see here build, no errors, and run the code. You can see data is 5. Not only that, you can also perform some arithmetic operations. So char a is equal to 5, char b is equal to 10, char c is equal to a plus b. And I'm writing here printf sum is equal to %c, and I'll write here %d you have to mention, because you don't want to print a char now, you want to print the number. So now I'll write here this. Now why I'm explaining this concept for you is, char is not only meant for storing character data, you can also store small numbers. Now let's save this and build it, and let's run this. Now you can see sum is equal to 15. So that's why for char data type we have unsigned char as well as char. Unsigned char can store the values from 0 to 255, whereas char data types can store the values from -128 to 127. So this is the range of values that an unsigned char, as the name itself is telling, unsigned char can store these range. Char can store these range values. What does it mean? Let's see this now. So I am declaring this as unsigned char. Data is equal to 255, and I'm printing it. So printf, and now let's see the format specifier that we use. See here now. So these are the format specifiers that we use. Now what I'll do is I'll write here %d, comma, data. Now let's see what will be the value. Because we have seen that for unsigned char, what's the range we have seen? 0 to 255 is the range for unsigned char. So it can hold 255. Now let's save it and build. So I just saved it, and I think it's getting built now. So just a second. Okay, so there was some problem with the editor. So let's close it. Now it's taking some time, so I'm just closing it. So it's taking some time. Okay, so I just closed code blocks and reopened it, and let's save this. And I just saved it, and I'll try to build it. So you can see there are no errors, and let's run the code. So you can see here, if I try to store 255 in unsigned char, it's storing it. Now what I'll do is I'll try to store 256, and let's save it and build it. And you can see that a large integer implicitly truncated to unsigned type. So you can see that I'm getting some warning. Let's try to run the code. Now you can see I'm not getting the output. So I am trying to store 256, and I'm trying to store this in data, and it's not able to hold it. I'm getting 0 as output. So in unsigned char, we can only store values from 0 to 255. In case if you try to store something beyond it, we are not getting the value as expected. Similarly, char data type can store -128 to, so now I'll try to store here 127. So in the notepad I've typed here -128 to 127. So now I save it, and I'll build this code. So now it's taking some time. Let me close this output window, and let's build it. So I just build the code, and no errors. Let's run the code. So you can see 127, I'm getting the answer. Now I'll try to store 128. So now I'll change it to 128, and let's save it, and let's build the code, and let's run the code. So basically I'm trying to store 128. So I'm trying to store 128. I'm getting -128. So how it works here is, let's try to explain this. So it starts from 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this. And now you can see here you'll get -1, -2, -3, -4, like this. So what is the range of it? The range of it is -120 is the lowest value. And if it goes like this, the value is 127, right? So now you can see here, when we are trying to store values like this, it works like this. So after 127, it cannot store the value. So if you assign 128, it's taking -128. So if I try to assign here 129, so after 127, it is -128. After this, it's -127. So if I try to assign 129, it will take -127. So now see here, let's stop the code, and let me close the output window, and let's try to assign 129. So as per the explanation, 129, I'm trying to assign 129, so it cannot store. So after 127, it's taking -128, and so it's 129, it will take -127. So let's save it and build it, and let's run the code. You can see it's showing us -127. Okay, so now just to summarize what we learned that we have these data types in C language. An unsigned integer, an unsigned long will store only positive numbers. Integer will store normal numbers, integral values. Long will store bigger values than integer. We'll see that range later. And float, double, decimal, long, double are used to store decimal values like 2.5, 6.5, etc. And unsigned char and char are used to store both char data types as well as numbers, small numbers. Now if you try to assign outside this, so this also works in the same way, like unsigned char also works in the same way, like this. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and the last value that it can store is 255. Now so it works like this. So if I try to assign 256, so after 255, if I assign 256, it'll take 0. If I try to assign 257, it'll take 1. See here now, let's try to understand this. I'm declaring this unsigned, and I'm trying to assign 255. So obviously it will give the output. We have done this. Let's save it and build it. You can see here No errors, no warnings. Let's run the code. You can see 255. But now when I try to assign 256, it will be 0. Let's save it and build it and run the code. You can see it showing as 0. So I hope the data types in C programming is clear and how to print it in printf is clear. So in the next module we will learn more about data types and how to read values from the user. We'll see that. So thank you and see you in the next lecture.